So let me reiterate, Happy Father's Day, all those, all those positive things that we think about. And, it's one of those things is that all of us, each one of us has a father of some sort. So some of us have fathers that have been part of our lives. Some of them, they've just been there all the time. Others have had fathers that haven't been there. They've kind of been in and out. But on top of that is that we all have a father in heaven. All of us have a father in heaven. He's the father to the fatherless. And so even when we haven't had anybody to really lean on, is that he's been there, and we just have chose not to lean on him, and we've gone in our own direction and done our own thing. And so we are very thankful for everybody who's come out and really just been a father, but also we are very thankful for the fathers that are out there, and especially God as well. I want to give you guys a story. Is that some of us, today we've been in this series called Bold, and so some of us have been very bold in our faith. We've done things that have been very bold. We've stepped out and we've done things. I remember being a young Christian. I think I just literally had just accepted Christ in my life again as an adult. And I went to, we were out and about, and let me start again, because that's the second time. But the first time I came in, and I was at church, and a lady next to me, she was sitting there, and God had been speaking to me, and he said, you need to give this lady some money next to you for some reason. And I couldn't really understand it. And she made an this overt thing that I needed to give it to her. But what I did is that I looked inside of my wallet, and I took it out, and inside of my wallet, which, now I'm married, and it'll never be there, but inside of my wallet, there was $5. And of that $5, I was thinking, I was like, this can be my lunch money today, and I was broke. I didn't have any money at the time, and so I was like, yeah, I'll just give this $5. I'll just give it to her. I don't know why. And I handed her the $5, and I said, I don't know why, but God's telling me to give you this. And she became ecstatic. She was like, I came to church today. I had enough gas to get here. I didn't know how I was going to get home, but I knew that I needed to be at church today. And for me, it was like such a joyous occasion. I was excited. I was like, oh man, that is amazing. God told me to do something. It was great. But for her, the joy inside of her was 10 times more. And she was like, I can't believe it. And she was like jumping for joy in service. I knew that God was going to provide for me. It was amazing. It really was. A couple months later, I had this unique opportunity where somebody came to me and said, we don't have water at our home, and I can't afford the bill. It's $94, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And for me, I knew I had $100. I actually knew that I had $100 in my pocket, but it was my $100. The last $100 was going to get me to and from work and get me, get gas money and lunch. And so I was disobedient, and I said no. And I didn't know what to do, and I walked away. But I walked away with this feeling, and I said, thinking back on the $5 situation, how much would that have blessed them? And how much would have God have blessed me in the end of that? Is because at the end of the $5, I was taking the lunch that day. And my lunch money turned into a $15 lunch that one of the pastors said, hey, we want you to come to lunch with us. We have a few things to talk to you about. And so not only did they provide me lunch, but it blessed me as well as I was given a blessing to her. The $100, where did that blessing get disconnected, and how much did I give to them? And how much did God hold back because I wasn't doing what he was doing, what did he ask me to do? The question comes into, is that how our faith is? Is our faith $5 faith? That it's easy for us to give $5? It's easy, here's $5. But when it comes time for us to step out and do the $100 item, are we able to give that $100? Are we able to do what God has asked us to do and go, my faith is a $100 faith, or is it $5 faith when it really gets tough? And it's a question for us. We've been going through Acts, and we've been talking about this, and we've gotten to this point where we're going to talk about bold obedience. The apostles, when you read Acts, you got to remember in Acts, the first 5 chapters, there's only 11 of them. There's only 11 apostles at that point. There's not the 12, and they haven't brought on, and Paul hasn't shown up yet. That happens in Acts 9. And so there's only 11 at this point. And so there's 11 guys that are just bold, and they are obedient, and they do what God asked them to do. They step out, and they go, well, God's asked me to do this, and I will do it. But God blessed their obedience. God continued to use, I'm going to just take care of you. Last week we heard about the signs and wonders. And, we looked at more people are being saved. Do you remember the first week they come out, the wonders happen, and 3,000 people are saved. Boldness. Obedience becoming boldness. And really, what have we done? And where have we stepped out and done what God has asked us to do? We get to this point and we start looking at it and we get religious trapped. We start stepping out and we don't know how to handle it. We don't want to handle it. And we start going, well, if I'm faithful, what am I supposed to do? And in this story, we're going to open up to Acts 5. If you don't have a Bible, we'll get you a Bible. If you need one, please put your hand up. But it's really important. We like to have you open your Bibles now because this is the one place that I've ever worked at, that I've walked in, and people just don't have a Bible. They don't show up I've never had people not show up to church with a Bible. And so it's important because I think a lot of us don't even know where Acts of the Apostles is. I can see people opening up to the table of contents a lot of times. Acts of the Apostles is the 5th book of the New Testament. So if you're looking at this, divide your Bible into thirds, because the last third is the New Testament. Open that up and go 5 books back. So and it's right there. We're going to open up to Acts 5. So Acts 5 and verses 17 through 20 right now. And it says, then the high priest and all of his associates, who were members of the party of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. They arrested the apostles and put them in the public jail. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. Go stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the people the full message of this new life. Now, bold obedience. They've been out running around. They've been trying to tell this message of God. And what happens is they've been really talking about Jesus. And what happens is the religious leaders are going, you need to stop. Stop immediately or we're going to put you in jail. And that's exactly what they did. They put him in jail and they said, we're going to put this up to Rome. The real big point about this is that bold obedience usually triggers opposition. So bold obedience usually triggers opposition. If you're keeping notes with this, this is big. The first verse here, it says in Acts 5:18, they arrested the apostles and put them in public jail. The second time in prison, it's not a good day for them. They were out hanging, they were driving down the road, they were singing Christian music in the car, they were doing what they were, and the police pulled them over and said, you're coming with us. And that's exactly how it kind of ended up being, is they got snatched up and they said, you are not going to do this. We're going to put you in jail, and we told you to keep your mouth shut about this dude, Jesus. I'm obeying God. Guys, think about something. I'm married. You guys think that I never get sick because I've been here for 3 years and I preached every message over the 3 years. I've been at church every week. I don't face the opposition. I'm not an A's fan. And really when it gets down to it, I'm not a Raiders fan. If you're a Raiders fan, you know that following your faith with them comes with lots of opposition because the team can never seem to win for some reason. So there's issues there. But these are things that you look at it, and for me, I look and I go, I do what God has asked me to do. I continue to do what he's asked, but I face opposition all the time. All the time I face opposition. But if you don't face opposition, you're not ready to be used by God. If you're not facing opposition and you're not doing what God has asked you to do, and if everything is just going smooth in your life, there's not a single bit of opposition, then you're probably not being used by God. You're probably just doing your own thing and just taking care of earthly things. It comes to this point where every significant act of obedience for my wife and I has been met with resistance and opposition. We go, hey, we're going to start a church. And so we started going to talk to different leaders. We go to talk to different church leaders. We go talk to different people. And they go, oh, little pastor boy wants to start a church. And my wife was looking at us. She was like, why are you doing the Pinocchio voice again? And I'm like, but that's exactly how it was. You're going to fail. We're Geppetto. We pull the strings. And it's really what it was. They were like, you're not going to make it. Why are you doing this? Why would you step out? And really what it came down to us is that we go, God is telling us to do this. And God goes, I will take care of you. I will give you the tools. I will help. And God, I will tell you is that the first day we started church, it was like, oh my gosh, are we supposed to be doing this? And we continued to stick through it and fight through the opposition, and God continued to bless us. He's taking care of us. When I made the decision that I was going to quit my job in order to do ministry full time, I was making $90,000 a year, and I walked away from it. There was nothing. We walked away from $90,000 a year to a $0 paycheck. Nothing. We had nothing coming in my wife's salon. That was it. That was all we had coming in. So to go from 90 to 0 plus my wife's income, it was very, very difficult. We stepped out on faith, and people are going, what is wrong with you? What are you thinking? Why would you do that? You're gonna lose everything. You're gonna lose your house. Here it is. It's 3 years later. We still have our home, we have our vehicles, we have everything, and God continues to provide. And we still get to eat out almost every night of the week. We are fast food junkies. God continues to provide. You know, it just happens. He's just like, here, I'm going to take care of you. You know, but everything that we have done, everything that we step out and do, and all of a sudden it's met with resistance and opposition. In your lives, I'm sure you deal with the same thing. Everything that you think that you're doing for God is met with opposition. You're like, well, and then a lot of times it stops us from doing it. We go, I want to start tithing, but how do we get rid of this debt? Well, what are we going to do about this? Well, you know, sometimes we have to downsize in order to get rid of the debt. We have to step back and go, what do I have everything I really need? And what am I supposed to do? You know, like I already said, we have to make it a priority to be at church on Sundays. It has to be a priority. You can't go, well, I woke up with a headache. Well, get in here and start worshiping out that headache. Get rid of it. You know, if you get in here and you start singing, that headache goes away. I show up here all the time. I've got a headache. I've got stuff going on. But guess what? I get up here and God takes care of me. He goes, you're going to preach, and that's the Spirit. He just comes in and says, I'm going to take care of you. You have to start getting in that mindset. Stop letting things stop you from getting here. Like I said, 3 years straight, I haven't missed a Sunday yet, and I usually preach 2 to 3 messages each Sunday. If I can make it to 156 different Sundays, and it puts us at 468, whatever it is, different services, I think that you can make it to 152 of them on that same period. I think, I'm not guilting anybody in here, but you should be here. You know, some of you have standards. You go, these are the standards that I'm going to live at. I'm going to go, we know somebody directly that goes, I'm not going to have sex until I get married. Well, when that happens, you face opposition. People is going, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing that? Why are you trying to be different? Because I have standards, and I will stick with my standards. I make a choice not to date people that aren't Christians. That's exactly the standard that some people, because why would you do that? Why are you doing that? Why? Because that is the standard, and I want somebody to follow the same beliefs that I have. You're going to face opposition. Some of us, though, we get that spiritual opposition. When we know that something's been called for us to do, and we doubt, we get scared, we go, God, are you really talking to me? Am I supposed to be doing that? God has put something on your heart one time. God has said, I want you to do this. And you step back and you cowered. You were like, I'm afraid to do what God has asked me to do. It's time for us to change that. Where that opposition's going to be there, don't let that opposition be you. Let that opposition come from outside sources. You stay strong. Don't let the people around you control what God has already asked you to do. Often, God, when we act boldly, God releases. That's when often, I can't even read my own notes. It says, when you have bold obedience, often releases God's miracles. When you start doing what God has asked you to do, that's when the miracles start flowing. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. That is a miracle. Locks just don't magically open when you're in prison. It just doesn't happen. You don't just sit there and go, yeah, I want these doors to open, and they automatically open. No, ask all the guys at all the prisons here in California. There's like 170,000 of them locked up. They stand at the door all the time. Open, 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 open. It's like they're knocking on the door like it's Montgomery Ward's when they're doing a sale. Open, come on, I want that stuff. I want to get out. Where are you at? What are you trying to do? That is a miracle that happens when the doors open up and then the angel goes, go out into the temple court and tell everybody what's happened. When a miracle has happened in your life, have you gone out and told everybody what's happened? Have you told them, this is what's happened in my life? Luke didn't even make a big deal of this happening in the Bible. He just said, we kind of expected the angel to show up. They locked us up. He didn't even make a big deal of it. He wasn't surprised that God showed up and sent an angel to open the doors and let them out. It wasn't like, wow, that's a miracle. Because when miracles happen, they talk about it for 4, 5, 6 different passages. This was one line. One line. Then an angel showed up and opened the doors. That's it. See you later. Peace. That's all I got for you. That's all he did. That's what he talked about. It wasn't some sort of deep thing. Walk in obedience to God, and you'll be surprised at God's miracles. If you just walk and do what God has asked you to do, you'll be surprised in the miracles that happen. Is there going to be rain? Absolutely. Absolutely there'll be rain. But if you walk and you do what he's asked you to do, then things all of a sudden start happening, and you start going, man, what happened there? I know of a relationship where there was an affair that took place. They came together and they got to where they were following God together. And all of a sudden, that relationship is stronger and better than it's ever been. Before the affair, before they were ever dating, they got together and they got with God. And when they put God in the relationship, it all of a sudden became a tight bond. And now that affair is not even something that's discussed, anything that's brought up, and they know that their relationship is going nowhere. Things don't get broken. You can try and break it apart, but when you put God in there, it's that glue that just holds it together. And as long as you're both pursuing that and chasing after that, that story can be the same thing, is that relationships that are broken can be brought back together and be stronger than ever. Have you ever put any pressure when somebody's got their hands like this? You ever put their hands, they can't get them apart. God is that pressure. If you've ever had anybody put their hands together like this and just put a little bit of pressure on the outside. I do it to my kids and my wife all the time. Yeah, you ain't going nowhere, hold it. They cannot get their hands apart because it's that little bit of pressure. It's that glue that holds them together, and that glue is God. You can't go, oh, that happened, and that's all. There's going to be opposition. But if you let God get involved, the miracles can happen, and the relationships will stronger and stronger than ever. Bold obedience always requires faith. Bold obedience always requires faith. Go stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell all the people the full message of this new life. It's not easy, and it's outside your comfort zone. Now, I want to remind you something about the 11 guys that went out into the temple courts. None of them were trained speakers. None of them went to school. None of them, one went to school, but he went to school to be a doctor. He didn't go to school to go out and go, I'm going to go do public speaking. They were fishermen. They were people that were just average people that Jesus came along and said, you I like, follow me. They were average people. It's one of these things, it's very hard to step out. If you've had no formal training, I dare you, come on up here and start preaching for me. I promise that it's very, very difficult. And even if you had some training, it's very difficult. And to go stand out in the middle of the public court in the city, it would be terrifying to start talking about this message and start saying, this is what happened. This is what's going on, and this is what's going on in my life. We have the same thing. Every time that I've gone, I'm going to do what God has asked me to do. We step out and we go, okay, we're going to lease a building. We can barely make the rent in the community center, but we're going to lease the building that's 5 times the rent, and God continued to provide. It required faith. God goes, that's what I want you to do, and he will provide. What are you doing? Are you relying on God, or are you relying on your own strength? Are you relying on your faith there and going, God, I'm going to pursue what you've asked me to pursue, knowing that you will provide as long as I'm following your direction? I'm following what you've asked me to do. I'm going to be bold in my faith. The problem is, so often we get afraid. We go, I don't want to start giving. I don't want to start doing what God has asked me to do. Because we know what happens at tithe time. We know that we start going, hey, we're going to pass the buckets. And the first thing we do is we go, oh, is there a way I can go to the bathroom right now? Can I disappear? Because it's very uncomfortable when that happens. Let me give you a story of somebody who started tithing a year ago. He started tithing a year ago, and he went from 0% to 10%. And he goes off and he goes, I know that God's going to provide for me. I know that he's going to take care of me. And so he just started giving the full 10%, week after week after week after week. And did it make an immediate difference? No. But when things started getting tough in their life, and he went to Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, and he started sitting through that, and he started applying all those principles to his life, and he started adding those things. He started paying off debt. He paid off 2 cars. They started paying off all these different things. All of a sudden, a check for $3,800 shows up in the mail. Where does a check for $3,800 come from? Nobody's expecting it. Nobody knew it was coming. All of a sudden, it showed up. 2 days later, another $2,000 showed up in the mail. Where did it come from? Nobody was expecting it. By the way, this story is of Cameron, our worship pastor. If you guys didn't know, we pay him very, very little, and he requires to live off of the faith that God is going to provide for me, because that's exactly what happens. We don't have the money to pay for our staff, to pay them a livable wage, but God continues to provide. He continues to give. Guys, as a staff, none of us make very much money at all, and we all pretty much want for nothing. Things are taken care of us. We get donations. Like these lights here. These lights were donated to the church. This is $15,000 in lighting that was donated to the church this last week. We'll continue to live in faith, and we ask boldly, and God continues to go, you are doing what I'm asking you to do, and I will provide. We are so thankful for what he does, but we don't step back, and we continue to do it. We step out and go, God, this is what you've asked us to do. You guys all have standards, and you have things that you go, it took faith to get it done. Some of you, it took faith to get started in a life group. Some of you, it took faith for us to start this church. It took faith for us to buy a bus. But, as soon as we started talking about it, all of you guys started contributing towards it. Each person in here gave something towards it. It takes faith to go off and step out and go, God, I want to do something different. I'm going to have standards. I'm going to do what you've asked me to do. It takes faith to seek reconciliation in a relationship. Maybe there's a broken relationship with somebody. It takes faith to step out and go, I got to risk being told no. Each guy in here knows what it's like to be told no. You know what it's like to be told no. But you also know what it was like to step out, because you can look to the person that's sitting next to you if you're a guy, and if she's here with you, then you can look over and you can go, see, I took faith for me to say, will you go out with me? Will you go on a date with me? It took faith to do that. It took faith for maybe some of you to go, will you marry me? Because there's always that possibility of a no. Sometimes that happens with God too. He goes, no, you're not ready for that yet. And sometimes the person who's just sitting next to you is going, no, you weren't ready for that yet. My wife, I asked her, and she looked around, and she said, yeah, there's nobody else around in here, and you're going to do for now. But it took faith. No, and she didn't. She was like, what took you so long? Is really what she said. What was wrong with you? God didn't tell them to, he didn't tell them a lot. God didn't give all kinds of instructions. He didn't go, I want you to do this, 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 and this, and this. He gave them one thing. God gave them one thing. He said, go out and tell everybody now. There was no details. There was not like, okay, I want you to talk about this, I want you to talk about this, and then, he didn't lay out the sermon. It wasn't like, I'm going to here's the 5 points that I want you to talk about. God said, no, go out and talk. Go out there and tell them about this. Well, what are you supposed to tell them about? Well, you better tell them the truth at that point, because everything else is going to come off wrong. So if you go out there and you just start talking about what God has done in your life, and you start going, look, he set us free. That's all God asked them to do, was go out, and he said one thing, but there was no details. There was nothing that sat there and goes, we're going to have all this. Most of us can't handle the details that God would give us anyway. God would lay out all these things, and we would become overwhelmed with it. We would get lost. God would go, I want you to start a church. And when you're going to start this church, you're going to need to hire all this staff. You're going to need to do this. You're going to need to do that. It would have been overwhelming for me when he gave me that call and go, I want you to start a church. But here's the list of all the stuff you need to do. Because I found that list after we already made the decision to start the church. And it's 470 items that you have to do before the first Sunday. 470 items. It would have been overwhelming. We learned as we went. We just started doing things, and we said, okay, we'll do this, and we'll do this, and we'll take care of these things. God doesn't work in the details. He works and he gives you the vision. He goes, now run with it. Take care of it. At daybreak, they entered the temple courts as they had been told, and they began to teach the people. They didn't delay, and they didn't do it halfway. They didn't delay at all. They went out there as soon as daybreak opened, as soon as they were light, they go, okay, now it's time for me to start talking about it. And they didn't do it halfway. They went out there and they just said, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to do exactly what they had to do, because they knew that delayed obedience was disobedience. They knew it. They knew that delayed obedience was just pure disobedience. They also knew that partial obedience was disobedience. They knew that if they continued to put it off or only do it halfway, that they were disobeying what God had asked them to do. In our lives, we do this so often. We go, I'm kind of in. I'll give you kind of partial. I'll just put my foot in the water. And a lot of us stand on the side of the pool, and we just dangle our foot in, and we go, I'm kind of in this. I'm a Christian of sorts. And we got one step in, and this is how we try and balance our lives. And look, I've got pretty good balance for being a dude that's 50 pounds overweight, and I can barely do it. It's like this is how we're living our lives. So most of the time, we have one foot in, and the other foot trying to struggle onto these earthly things. We're trying to stay above ground over here, going, I'm going to do what you've asked me to do. That's partial disobedience. You're just doing whatever you want to do. You're just disobeying what God has asked you to do. You either get in or you stay out. Which one are you doing? Because either way, you're either going to obey him fully or you're just going to be in disobedience all the time. Get in with God. Stop dangling one foot over and stop trying to go, I'll get to that later. I'll start doing this later. I'll start following God's plan for my life later. I'll start tithing later. I'll start doing this later. If this changes, then I'll do this. If that does this, I'll do this. These are all things that are all disobedience. We've literally disobeyed God by delaying what he's asked us to do or by partially obeying him. Now, the reason why I bring this up is that if you have children and you tell your children to go clean their room, you tell them, go clean your room. And if they're in the middle of playing Xbox or the Wii or whatever you have at home, or maybe they're on the computer and whatever, and they just sit there and they go, yeah, I'll get to that later, Mom or Dad or whatever. And they just sit there and they're there for another hour. Some of you guys get to this point where you go and you start breaking out the belt. What did I tell you to do? I told you to go clean that room. Or, they go in there and they clean their room, and you go in there to go check on it, because most of you, as good parents, you go check to make sure they actually did it. And you walk in there and the closet door is shut and the bed has got all the stuff hanging over the side of it, and you go, well, let me open the closet door, and everything falls out on you. And then you open up underneath and you lift up underneath the blankets, and guess what? It's just the bedspread that's hung over, and everything else is shoved down in underneath there. You told them to go clean their room, not to partially shove everything underneath the bed and in the closet. That was disobedience. What do? You make them do it. You sit there and go, now fix it. You drag it out from underneath. This is how God works in our lives. We delay obedience. Well, he gets angry. He goes, what are you doing? Why aren't you doing what I asked you to do? Or we partially obey what he's told us to do, and our life ends up being more of a wreck, because as a parent, I know what I do. I pull it all out from underneath there, and the room looks twice as bad as it did when it started. That's how our lives end up becoming. When we partially obey him, our lives become chaotic. We start running in two different directions. We're trying to keep up with these earthly things when everything is supposed to be about pursuing the eternal. We continue to go, I got to have this car, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get that car. I got to have this house. I got to have this job instead of the job that I'm supposed to have. I got to do these different things. And we continue to partially obey what God has asked us to do instead of fully obeying and being obedient. Guys, obedience, it sounds like a bad word. You go, oh, I'm being treated like a dog. You're not being treated like a dog. Obedience makes it to where God can go, I can bless you, I can give to you, I can take care of you, just like you do with you. It's pretty bad, just like you do with your kids and with your dog. When your dog does what you want it to do, you give it a treat. You don't kick it down the street. Here, go get some food from somebody else. The problem that we've gotten to is that we've gone, instead of, oh, you partially cleaned your room, let's go get a toy. Let's go get some candy. Let's go do this. Well, God doesn't work that way with us, and he just doesn't reward us for partially obeying him or delaying our obedience. He rewards us when we fully do what he's asked us to do. I asked you to go out and talk. I asked you to go out and speak. I asked you to start a church. I asked you to start a life group. I asked you to start doing things different in your life. And you're like, yeah, I kind of like the stuff I have. And you wonder why he doesn't bless everything. It's because we partially obey what he's asked us to do. In our home this week, we've had some new family members. And for you guys who don't know, is that we've been taking care of a couple of children. Their mother went off and decided to get pregnant and have a child this weekend. And so, and that's a great thing, because, the Bible tells us to go off and populate the world. And that's exactly what she did. She went off and populated the world, and they had a child. And they actually had a 5-pound baby born over the weekend. But their mother's been in the hospital, and the husband's been on deployment in Kuwait or, someplace over there. He's in Afghanistan. And so for us, we knew it was our duty that while she was in the hospital, that their children would come stay with us. But what it's caused us to do is it's really caused us to look at how we act at home. How we take care of things at home, and how these children, because they come in and it's a different lifestyle. We have things that are different in our home. We're busy people, number one, and so that 8 o'clock bedtime went out the window very fast. And we do, we're barely getting dinner at that time. But life is busy with us, in and out. But what we came to the understanding was that we should send them home with the standards that we have. Our children run around arguing who's going to read what Bible, and who's going to pray at dinner first, and really those are the standards that we want to send those children home with. Well, how do we do that? Well, we just live the life that God asked us to do. We don't change anything just because we have a guest over. We do what God asked us to do. So these children are going to go home, and they're going to have this. They're going to go home to this. Number one is that they're going to go home to a brand new baby sister, and they're going to go home with some different standards, and they're going to know that these are the things I can do in order to kind of stay from underneath mom's foot, because mom's struggling right now. husband's away, and he'll be home here soon. And if Armory, if you're watching, then hello, and thank you for tuning in. We have to obey God completely and immediately. You know, some of you guys, you know how we are here is that we call you. We pick up the phone and we call people from this church. And sometimes people pick up the phone and they go, oh my God, I can't believe you called. Well, you gave us your phone number, right? I mean, you got to know that we were going to call at one point or another. And that's what we do. We call, there's a couple reasons why we call, but number one is because we love you guys and we care about what's going on in your lives. We really are interested and we want to pray for you and we want to do life together. That's number one. Number two is that when you fall off from here and if you're not going to another church, we want to help you find another church. If something happens or something's going on, we want to help. We're not about growing this church. We're about growing God's kingdom. And that's really what it all comes down to. If we can help you find a place that you're going to be able to serve or you're going to be able to be fit in and just be taken care of, we want to do that. And the last reason is because we know that it takes us to really reach out to you because a lot of times you don't want to reach out. But you guys get in shock when we call. You're like, oh my God, you called me. Why'd you call me? What's wrong with you? It's like, what do you mean what's wrong with me? We're calling because we know something's wrong with you. We're calling because you don't want to tell us what's going on. We read your connection card. It's like we actually got that thing. In the Bible, it's the same thing. The high priest calls out. He's like, hey, where have you guys been? What's going on? What's happening here? And he sent for the disciples that weren't in jail. That the angel had already been in there, and he's already freed them out. We gave you strict orders not to teach in this name, he said. Yet, you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood. Peter and the other apostles replied, we must obey God rather than men. Why are we so bold? Why do we have bold prayers? Why do we speak boldly? Because of Jesus. That's why. That's why we do it. Why are we so bold? Why do we call you? Why do we do advertising? Because God has asked us to do it. What is holding you back and what are you trying to obey? Are you trying to follow God or are you trying to follow man? Which one are you doing? In your life, you can look at it and go, I'm following God's laws or I'm following man's laws. What am I trying to do? And a lot of us, like I said, there's a line that runs down here, and so you look at me and why am I teeter-tottering? It's because sometimes we like to be on this line and we go, I'm going to follow what man has for me. I'm going to pursue money. I'm going to pursue these earthly things. And then some of us, we get on this side and we go, I'm going to pursue what God has for me. But it takes a lot of work for us to get on this side of the line where we're going, I'm going to go after what God wants. I'm going to go after instead of going, I need to chase after this money. I need to chase after this car. I got to have this. I got to have that. And all of a sudden, we end up disobeying God because of delayed obedience and partial disobedience. In your life, look at it. Where are you at? Where are you sitting at? Are you obeying man or are you obeying God? That's what it comes down to. And where is that boldness to come from? You start looking at it and go, where am I at? I live on this line or I live on this side. I've got one foot in the pool. It's nice and cool. It's keeping me cool, but that's partial obedience. And that's disobedient. As it gets to this point when you have to start looking at your life and you start going, guys, if delayed obedience is disobedience and partial obedience is disobedience, that means that in God's eyes we're sinning. And if we're sinning, we know where sin leads. Sin leads us into one direction. And not one direction to the band, one direction to hell. That's what it ends up at. When we do these things, it takes us from following what God has asked us to do, and we go, I'm going to do what Mike wants to do, or I'm going to do whatever it is that you go, my boss has asked me to do this, and so I'm going to give up my standards, I'm going to give up what I believe in, and I'm going to follow those things. That is disobedience, and that is sinning. And if we're sinning, we know where that leads to. We continue to make the divide greater and greater between us and God. We continue to make it greater and greater and greater and greater. And all of a sudden, we end up over in one spot and we go, I don't know why God doesn't hear me. I don't know why he doesn't hear what's going on with me. I don't know why it seems like I don't hear that voice anymore. I don't even hear my conscience anymore. Because we have created such a divide, it's like the Grand Canyon between us and God. We can't keep living this way. We need to start living in this. When he asks you to do something, you do it and you do it now. There's no more delayed obedience. There's no more, I'm just going to do it halfway. Dive in. The water's nice. I'll tell you that right now, is that once you started, because I would tell you, I lived there. I lived there 1 foot in, and then maybe I got to this point where I put a leg in, But it wasn't until I fully got into it and I was like, God, I'm going to just do what you've asked me to do, is that where I found happiness and where I found joy, and I knew that I was doing what God asked me to do, and that my life was fulfilling without money, without all the nice fancy things. My life was fulfilled because I had God in it. And I obeyed. When you start thinking about this and you start going, where is my bold obedience? Have I been boldly following what man has asked me to follow? Or have I been boldly following what God has asked me to do? And really being bold about it. Do your neighbors know? Do your coworkers know? Do they know that there's something different about you? Do they know? And you don't have to go out and go, I'm a Christian, hi. You don't have to do that because they'll think you're weird. But you can live your life in a standard where you go, I don't accept that. Don't swear in front of me. Don't ever use that name in vain in front of me. Don't do this. Don't do that. You can set the standard, and people respect it. You know, talk to Winston. People don't say words like that in front of him because he's set the standard. Why did he set that standard? Because that's where his life is. And he goes, I'm in. No, it took him 30 years to get there. But it's never too late. It's never too late to get there. You can get there. But you have to start going, I'm in. And I'm going to get all in. Or I'm going to continue to boldly pursue sin. Which one is it? Are things going to be are you going to have to make changes in your life? Absolutely. Are some people going to have to go away? Maybe. But what standard have you set? And what have you said that this is going to be where I'm going to live my life at, and I'm going to follow God. I'm going to do it wholeheartedly. It's time for us to really start boldly following what God has asked us to do. As we kind of go into this, and really this was a great fit for us going into this next series, because it's going to help us, this next series is going to help us recognize some of the things that are toxic to our lives and how we continue to block things out. What are we going to do to protect ourselves? Do we need to wear the yellow suit? You know, or do we need to wear the white paper suit with a gas mask? It's really going to help us learn and identify, where do I need to make these changes? Where do I need to start making changes at in my life? But first, it takes you to go, I'm ready to step out and start going, God, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to start following you. And I'm going to start doing what you've asked me to do, and I'm going to start living the life you've asked me to do. Instead of going, this is the direction that Mike wants to go. Because that road doesn't lead to happiness. It doesn't lead to where you feel fulfilled. It actually leads to depression. It leads to anger. And eventually, it leads to hell. It's time to pursue what God has asked you to do and start living the life that He's asked you to live. And maybe it means stepping out and doing things a little differently than the way you've been doing it in the past. Maybe it takes stepping out and going, I'm ready to follow God, because you haven't been doing it. And you can start over right now. You can start going, I'm ready to follow, and I'm ready to be obedient, and I'm ready to just, God, I don't understand it yet, but I'm ready. You can do it now, and we can make a change. And you can walk out of here, and service can literally be life-changing, which is what it's supposed to be. You can recognize it and walk out and go, I'm ready to do something different. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much. Thank you so much for all that you have done in our lives, and that you've directed us here today for a reason. You've brought us here for us to hear this message of changing what we've been pursuing, whether we've been pursuing these earthly things or we've been pursuing you, but maybe we haven't been pursuing you fully. We've been just delaying obedience to you, or partially giving to you, or partially following you. We partially read the Bible. We don't spend time in prayer with you. And God, I want to change that. And I want to do something different now. I want to start a new relationship with you. I want to boldly follow you to where I go, God, I'm ready to do life with you, and I'm ready to have the life that you've given, that you've designed for me, knowing what's going to make me happy, knowing what's going to lead to your eternalness, knowing that I'm going to be able to come to you and go, God, these are my burdens, and you'll take them. God, we need your strength, and we need your courage to just step out and go, I want to live boldly for you. God, I know it starts with a new relationship, or I know it starts maybe just having a relationship with you. But God, sometimes I don't feel worthy, or sometimes I just don't know you enough, and I feel that I can't step out and go, God, I'm ready to follow. Or I've raised my hand before, and I'm following, but maybe we need to step out and go, I'm ready to follow again, and I'm ready to follow the plan that you've had for my life. And I know that you sent your son for me, for all of us. And I'm willing to accept that and start living the life that you said that this is the direction I want you to go. Stop sinning and follow me. I want to do that, God. I'm ready to do it now. Keeping your heads down. If you prayed just that along with me, that you prayed that you're ready to do life, that you're ready to step out and just go, I'm going to follow what the plan that God has for me. Can you just put your hand up for me? If you could just put a hand up saying, I'm ready, God. I want to step out and do what you've asked me to do, and I'm going to live boldly. God, thank you so much. I'm ready to do something different now. I'm ready to do life that you've asked me to do, and I don't care what people say. I'm ready to follow you. God, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you have done, and thank you for everybody who's put their hands up. You can put them down now, guys. Thank you so much. I'm ready to do life for you, and even if that means that people are going to say things different, or if they're going to call me, I'm going to set the standard, and they're going to know that I am the light. God, thank you so much. Thank you for this message and how much it's impacted each one of us in here right now, that we know that some of us have had delayed obedience, that we've been putting off our calling, that we've been putting off what you've asked us to do. Or maybe we've only been partially following what you've asked us to do. And God, we are asking that you will convict us now, that you will say it's time for you to stop and just follow and do what I've asked you to do. God, thank you. Thank you for all that you are doing. In your son's name we pray. Amen. Guys, inside of your bulletin there was a connection card, and we ask that you hold on to that into this point, and we're going to collect those here in a minute. And what we ask you to do is, if you decided that you wanted to raise your hand and you wanted to commit your life now, then please check the box. I promise you that we're going to send you an email. We're going to say, hey, thank you, and we're going to send you some tools to help you grow and help you find the calling for your life. As our worship team is going to come back up, and they're going to play us out in the last song, but we're going to ask that you fill out the connection card, and we'll collect those. But if you have prayers, or you know what God's calling is for your life, or you know where you're going to go, or what direction that he's asking you to go, then put them down there. We want to be in prayer for you. We want to start going, God, how can we help? What can we do? And so that's what we were called to do here together. We're called to do life with one another. That's the reason why we call. That's the reason why we collect connection cards, because we care, we love, and we want to help one another grow. Maybe you've got this calling to start a group. Maybe you've got a calling to do something different. Now is the time to start doing it. Start living for God. We'll start changing things as we go. As we go through this next series, we'll start removing things out of our life. But right now, it's going, I'm going to live for him, and I'm going to follow what you've asked me to do. It's time to change things up a little bit in our lives. If you didn't get an opportunity to drop your tithe, then you can do it as it comes by. It goes to the same place. Guys, thank you so much. Have a blessed week.